Warning: the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Accordingly, viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
Hi Dave, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Another fun-filled week of work.
Hey, it's always good to be back at work though.
Yep.
Yeah, I know Kim's had a few short weeks, which has been a real hurt to us. So we're glad, we hate the overtime on one hand, but love it on the other.
Yep. And the money's good, but you complain about the work and the soreness.
Right, right. And the lack of time. So, how do you want to begin tonight's show?
I'm gonna let you take most of the floor.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me get my trusted Dollar Tree glasses on. Sorry. Okay, so I'm excited about tonight's show. We're going back a little bit to an older story. She goes by the name Nannie Doss, but her birth name is actually Nancy, and she has confessed to killing. Well, one report says 11 people, another report says 12. What I've added up is the 12. Um, and they were most of them related to her. Um, Nanny Nanny was born Nancy Hazel, and her nickname was Nannie, and Doss was a final married name. She was born November 4th, 1905, in Blue Mountain, Alabama, which is now part
Hi,
of
Carol.
Anniston. Hello, Carol. She became known as the Giggling Granny, the Lonely Hearts Killer, Black Widow, and Lady Bluebeard. Um, and the Giggling Granny, I think, was the most common name that she was known by. And the reason for that is because when police arrested her for the final murder just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, um, when she was talking about the murder of four of her five husbands, she giggled through the whole thing. And she was they said by all accounts, just passing by her on the street, you would think she was just an ordinary, everyday grandmother. But, to sit there and be able to describe how you murdered people and giggle through it shows there was very definitely a dark side to her. To give a little background to her, um, she was on a train traveling with her family when she was young and had ended up hitting her head on a metal bar on the train. And she had issues with migraines and other things. And it is believed that it could have played a role in her mental state as far as even her crimes. I could not find anything that gave like a medical or psychological diagnosis on that, but that is the general consensus. Dave, could you find anything on that?
Yep. For years she suffered from severe headaches, blackouts, and depression. And uh, she herself blamed these and her mental instability on that accident.
Correct. Um, okay, so also in doing some research, um, around sixth grade, she was pulled completely out of school to work on the family farm. Up until then, it was just kind of hit or miss as to whether she was going to be in school or not that day, or even complete a day, even if she went. Um, and the most of the time she was at home, and until finally they just pulled her out. Also, in her childhood, which could have added to the mental state that she was in, um, she claims to have been raped by several men not too
Hmm.
long after the incident on the train. Her father did not believe her, and nothing was ever pursued or done about it. Um, so that is something that she had endured as a young child, and was just
Also,
basically left
her
on her
her
own.
her dad was horribly controlling. Her favorite hobby in childhood was reading her mother's romance magazines and dreaming of her own romantic future. Um,
Right.
Later, her favorite part was the Lonely Hearts column. But her father forbade her and her sisters from wearing makeup, attractive clothing,
Mhm.
and he forbade them to go to dances and social events as well.
Correct. Yeah, she had a very abusive childhood in many facets. Um, in 1921, she was forced into marriage by her father to someone that she had only known, by her account, approximately 4 months, and
Hmm.
his name was Charlie Bragg. And that was not a good marriage for her. Charlie Bragg drank and was abusive. Um, they had a few children together. Her oldest was Melvina. They
Hmm.
had four daughters together, wasn't it? And then
Yep.
two of them, um, Melvina survived, and the youngest, Florine,
Yep.
survived. However, the two middle daughters, um, they said died. The doctor said of apparent food poisoning. However, in later accounts, she stated that she had put rat poison or arsenic in the food. Um, and Charlie Bragg took Melvina, the oldest, and fled for about a year. Um, he left in 1926 with Melvina and left Florine, who was a newborn. He returned in 1928. No, I'm sorry, he left in 27, came back in 1928. And when he returned, he brought with him a new girlfriend who also had a
Hmm.
child and brought Florine back. They did divorce, and um, shortly after the two daughters died, Charlie Bragg's mother died.
Hmm.
Um, so there we have three deaths. And
I do have a quote that she put together in an interview that said, "I married as my father wished in
yeah,
1921 to a boy I only knew 4 or 5 months, who had no family, only a mother who was unwed and who had taken over my life completely when we were married. She never seen anything wrong with what she did. She would take spells. She would not let my own mother stay the night."
right. And yes, that, as they said, that was one of her statements. Um, and I'm going to just get some brief highlights and let you just keep jumping in, Dave, with more detail here. Um, in 1929, Nancy married Robert Harrelson, And at this time, she only had Melvina and Florine, who was the baby. And despite learning that Harrelson was an alcoholic and had a criminal record, including, yes, Carol, yes, she did kill the mother-in-law, and it came out later that she also collected a life insurance check in which they stated that she fraudulently signed. Also, there is information that concerning property that was owned that she thought she was going to collect on, and she did not. The property went to, wasn't it the husband's sister that the property was left to?
Yeah.
And yes, uh, the mother-in-law, one of them was asphyxiation. Was that the mother-in-law, Dave? I've got 14 pages.
Yeah. Let me look it up.
One of the deaths was, they said, by asphyxiation. The rest were by arsenic.
Except no one. One wasn't by asphyxiation. In 1943, Melvina gave birth to Robert Lee Haynes.
What was
Another
that pen?
and another baby followed 2 days later, but died soon afterwards, exhausted from labor and groggy from ether that they used to use back then. Melvina thought she saw her visiting mother stick a hat pin into the baby's head. When
Yes.
she asked her husband and sister for clarification, they said that Nannie had told them the baby was dead. They noticed she was holding the hat pin. Doctors, however, could not give a positive explanation.
Right. But the mother-in-law, that was the grandchild. The mother-in-law is the one that I was thinking was asphyxiation. Or was that the food poisoning as well? There was one of them that stated about apparent asphyxiation.
Yep.
They didn't know how that occurred.
The first marriage, they never actually looked into it to see if it was poisoning. When it was Bragg's. There was no account. There was just speculation on what she had done.
Okay. So like I said, different stories have a few details slightly different because a lot of this was not confirmed. Most of it she got by with and was never looked at. She just confessed at the end and told them all because there had just been a lot of question. And the daughter, Melvina, had always questioned the death of her baby. And then Robert Harrelson and Nannie Doss, they remained married for 16 years in spite of it. And it was reported that they both had extracurricular activities throughout the years that, they had remained married for 16 years. And then she poisoned him. And then...
Okay, I did find this. The grieving parents drifted apart, and Melvina started dating a soldier. Nannie disapproved of him, and while Melvina was visiting her father after a particularly nasty fight with her mother, her son Robert Lee Haynes died mysteriously under Nannie's care on July 7th of 1943 or 45 at a year and a half, 2 years old. The death was diagnosed as asphyxia from unknown causes. 2 months later, Nannie collected the $500 life insurance policy she took out on Robert.
Okay. So there was 2 grandchildren in total. So we have her sister, her mother-in-law, 2 grandchildren, and did I say 2 children? Did I count that? there's 12 total. It's a lot to go through. Really, it's a lot to unpack.
Hmm.
I ended up printing off like 14 pages plus notes I wrote. Um, it's just it is horrible. And there were life
It
insurance
is.
checks, not with all of the deaths, but there were life insurance checks with some of them in the amounts of the first one was $500, and then the others were around the 14 to $1,500 ballpark, give or take just a little. Yes, ma'am, they were all family, some biologically and some through marriage, but all family, absolutely, Carol. And as Dave said,
Yep.
Malvina thought that she had seen her mother put the hat pin through her daughter's head.
Soft spot. Soft
Yeah, to
spot.
the
Yeah.
soft spot into the brain. Um, but again, she was not looked at. It was just looked at by the doctors. Oh, that happens sometimes. Uh, Arlie Lanning was her third husband,
I'm
and
sorry. Did you cover the death of Harrelson?
he was also murdered. Yes, by poison.
Yep. In 1945, shortly after the grandbaby's death, Harrelson returned home drunk and raped Nannie that night. And the next day, she put rat poison in his corn whiskey jar, and he died that very evening.
Yes. Yes. So, uh, she, like I said, they had made their marriage work like 16 years, at that point, but it was very abusive, and he was an alcoholic. And as Dave stated, that particular night he had come home very drunk and, insisted that she be intimate. And, yeah, Carol, I think you're right. And I think, to this day, it's really hard for us to understand, mothers doing certain things. But I think even more so back then, I think we have more understanding and realization of mental illness and different factors and things. And,
Well, and at this time,
involved.
even when she was married to Braggs, she had developed her own alcohol and chemical dependency as well. That, I mean,
Right,
massive, massive alcoholism.
right. Um, But she met Arlie Lanning through the Lonely Hearts column, which, as Dave had stated earlier, had become a very important um, article to her when she was younger. Um, and she has stated later that she was always looking for love or the ideal relationship, and these men just didn't fit the bill for her of what the ideal was. And of course, they wouldn't. They were most of them abusive and alcoholics and just terrible relationships. And
And
of course, she
she was actually traveling around the country at this time and following and picking out Lonely Hearts column out of the Lonely Hearts column. And this was while she was traveling in Lexington, North Carolina. And they married 3 days after they met.
right. Uh, so after Arlie Lanning died, she did collect a life insurance check. And this is the one, this is the husband, where the couple's house, which had been left to Lanning's sister, had somehow mysteriously burned down.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had stated that she thought the insurance check would go to her, and it did not. it went to the mother, who mysteriously died in her sleep. And so Nanny took the check and fraudulently signed that check and fled.
Yep.
So she's quite a piece of work here.
Yeah, she's catching up real fast on tally marks.
um, so she started looking for another husband, and she joined a different dating service called um, the Diamond Circle Club, where she.
Before you go into that one, Nanny did leave North Carolina after Lanning's mother died in her sleep, and ended up at her own sister Dovie's house. And Dovie was bedridden. It would be Nanny's sister. Dovie was bedridden, and within days after Nanny's arrival, she died.
Right. Um, so she met Richard Morton of Jamestown, North Carolina, and they married in 1952 in Emporia, Kansas. And he did not have a drinking problem, which was different from the prior husbands, but he was very much an adulterer.
Yeah.
Um, and it said they were saying that during this time is when she was taking care of her mother, Louisa, and she poisoned her mother, Louisa, in January of 1953. I'm sorry. I started saying 83. 1953, when she came to live with them. And then Morton, the husband, Richard Morton, he died in May 19th of 1953.
Yep.
So you can see a lot of these deaths are happening sometimes within months, maybe a year apart, but there's still a lot of deaths in a relatively short time. After Morton died, she married Samuel Doss of Tulsa, Oklahoma, in June of 1953. Doss was a Nazarene minister who had lost his family to a tornado in Carroll County, Arkansas. And Samuel Doss, he disapproved of her romance novels, story in which were, of course, stories that his wife really adored, and probably to some extent really tried to bury herself into as is maybe a way to help escape the reality
Mm-hmm.
of her life for that
Yep, the
few minutes.
fantasy aspect.
Yes, that she's in it. That was, her few minutes of maybe fantasizing she's somewhere else other than where she really was. And but he disapproved of these things. And um, so Mr. Doss was admitted to the hospital with flu-like symptoms, and they diagnosed him as having a severe digestive tract infection.
Mm-hmm.
He was treated and released on October 5th. However, upon being sent home with his wife, he died October 12th, 1954. And she said it says that Nannie killed him that evening and rushed to collect the two life insurance policies. So the others only had one. This husband had two life insurance policies. However, the doctor, while Mr. Doss was in the hospital, had suspected foul play. He just
Mm-hmm.
didn't prove it. So he had to release the husband. However, when he died a week later, um, he had talked Nannie into allowing an autopsy to be done. Um, and convinced her that it was important to have it done, and fed her basically some BS story to get her to agree. In other words, they weren't looking at her, it was for other purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So she agreed, and of course they found enough arsenic in his body, they said, to basically be able to kill a horse. And so of course that led to her arrest. And while, like I said, while under arrest and being questioned, um, she confessed to killing four husbands, her mother, her sister, her grandson, and her mother-in-law. But it was not just her grandson, but it was the infant grandchild as well, that I believe they said was a daughter, or granddaughter. Sorry, let me correct that. Granddaughter. Um,
Yep.
so it was a total of 12 people in a relatively short time. Um, she was prosecuted by J. Howard Edmondson, who later became the governor of Oklahoma, but she pleaded guilty on May 17th, 1955, and was sentenced to life imprisonment. Um,
Um, Before we get too far ahead, where we were, prosecutors that were investigating and interviewing her would talk about how uncouth she was. They'd be sitting there trying to interrogate her to get information, and she was given it, but she was laughing, and it just drove them crazy. How could she be laughing during these investigations and carrying on like nothing in the world was wrong? That's where she got the
right,
catchphrase giggling granny.
right. And that's what I was saying with some of her names that she became known by, these little nicknames. If I'm not sure what to call them, little pseudo names. Um, that's what I was kind of looking at, is what is going on in somebody's mind to be able to discuss murdering people, but not just people, family
Your
that.
own family, your own blood.
Right. And you're giggling. Yes, I agree, Carol. She does look like she's trying to be somewhat flirtatious, and maybe she was, because she had wrapped herself up to some extent in this fantasy life, I think, that she wanted. Um, and it's really, a sad situation for the victims. But in all honesty, if that head injury truly plays a role in it, it's kind of a sad situation for her, because back then, it was not addressed. And I'm not justifying somebody murdering by any means. But,
Mhm.
I
I
wonder if it could have all been avoided had they really known the extent of the head injury beyond just the headaches and things like that. If they had really understood the full extent of it, and if they had maybe had, I guess, more advanced knowledge and been
Yep.
better able to help deal with it, could this whole situation have been avoided and gone a different direction, and get her more help?
My wife's grandmother was in the area when this was going on because they are from the Oklahoma Muskogee area, and I asked her. I said, "Do you remember this story?" And her words verbatim were, "Oh yeah, she's freaking nuts."
You have to be. You have to be. I mean, seriously, I am, the murder of anybody is atrocious. And
Oh, it is.
but
And honestly, this is what I'm thinking. If she had such a severe alcohol problem, plus she was already having blackouts from that accident when she was on the train to southern Alabama to see her family. Along with that kind of, frontal lobe concussion, and then you mix alcohol on top of it to a degree that you're becoming a blackout drunk, it's a recipe for disaster. And honestly, when we get into like the plea and stuff like that, I think that's what actually helped her out in the long run. But I mean, you could see all throughout every one of these, except for the kids. The kids, there was no reason for it. I think she was doing stuff to the kids to slowly hurt others around her. But when it came to her husbands, if they did anything wrong that she did not agree with, that was it. They were done.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. The murder of any person is absolutely horrible. But, I think on some level, we look at babies and children as just a little slightly different because they are so innocent. They haven't done anything. And I'm not saying adults have done something, but in her situation, she felt like her husband had done something. It wasn't just the greed of the check or whatever.
Right.
She felt justified because of the treatment that
Mm-hmm.
she received. But when you're talking, your small grandson or your newborn granddaughter, they sure have not done something, to justify that. And to me, that's just another level of, for lack of a better term, what the heck,
Yeah.
Um,
Yes,
you know,
Carol, I agree with you. I don't know how someone who does things like this can look at themselves in the mirror either,
yeah.
especially looking at those little itty bitty eyes in
Oh,
that child. And they did come back and they classified the motive as life insurance money and the search for quote unquote real romance of life.
yeah.
And I should go in to point out on a side note is on sudden deaths, like God forbid I were to fall over of a heart attack now, whether it's now or if I'm in my 90s and I fall over dead from a heart attack, there's automatically an autopsy now, straight across in the 50 United States. And this is one thing that prompted was them, they automatically test for arsenic poisoning because of this case.
I did leave something out that I want to go back in. When she collected the first life insurance check, um, it was just enough for her to go and buy some land. And
Yep.
so uh, she, I don't know. I wonder. This wasn't stated in anything I read, but I'm just throwing it out there, and would love y'all's thoughts. But maybe there was part of her that one did feel justified with murdering the husbands due to treatment of her, etc., but also felt like, well, I'm not just going and blowing this money. I'm using it to try to provide a good life or
Hmm.
maybe a stable life. And maybe that was part of her way of rationalizing what she's doing. Like she got rid of the bad and she's trying to, it's a very twisted way of looking at it, but that's what I'm wondering, and like Dave, not just you, feel free, of course, to throw in your thoughts, of course, but anybody watching, I'm really curious to know y'all's thoughts and perspective. And Carol said I could tell you some things, personal story. Oh yeah, we, I
Yep.
think we all have some. I don't know if that's something, if somebody has a situation in their life, we may do some stories,
Hmm.
you know, if it's with the subject of true crime situations. So, that's something we very definitely could potentially be open to doing. I know I have a situation in my life, and we talked about doing a show about my situation. So yeah, Carol, if you have, oh, you have stuff about autopsies in hospitals. Okay, I thought you were saying you have a similar, like a crime situation. I'll say, yeah, we could be open to doing a show, here and there that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, if you have comments and stuff about autopsies in hospitals that might enlighten us or just give us, you know, um, some perspective, like feel free to share. Because I sit here and I don't want to just give the outline of a story and have it be dull and blah, kind of
Yeah.
give an outline. But, I really would love to hear people's thoughts and ideas about these stories and what fascinates me and what I want to, what I always sit and think about is how did people get to this point?
I
You-
think her point, she got to it when, she was suppressed so much by her father, forced to work on the farm, quit school, so she couldn't read well, she couldn't write well, she could not do arithmetic. So the only thing she had was farm life and back labor to go off of. Forced to marry at 16 and started punching out kids to a guy that was an alcoholic and a womanizer. She went from one bad relationship to another, but a lot of it was her own fault too. You meet a guy off Lonely Hearts column and then you're married 3 days later.
yeah,
Even in the 50s, the 40s and 50s, that's unheard of.
right.
There was courting back then and stuff. And then she got with Samuel Doss, and we got a Nazarene minister. Yeah, he telling her what he could and could not do. Um, but as far as, the passion of the romance novels and things like that, um, but that's she could have had it good with that one. She honestly could have. But I think she was too far down the rabbit hole. There was no way to walk turn herself back.
Yeah, well, I mean, she would have had to accept the adultery, you know. But considering where she had been, I agree with Dave to some extent that, he was not abusive to her as such. By
And
all
the
of,
adultery, she could have put her foot down. If I can't have my romance novels, you ain't flirting around and running around. That's it.
yeah.
She's like, you don't know what I'm capable of. Don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, and Tina, you're absolutely right. Crimes in a fit of rage are considered crimes of passion. She
And I
definitely premeditated. I mean,
Yep, mental health is a huge crisis for
yeah.
many that gets ignored, shoved under the rug, and when continued to go unchecked and unmedicated and they don't have therapy tools, sadly it does turn into cases like this.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's kind of the point that I think I was trying to get to is if her head injury, if there had been more knowledge and it had been addressed, I just can't help but wonder if the whole situation could have gone in a different route. Maybe not, you know,
Yeah.
but back then we just didn't have the same understanding and the same tools and things that we do today, which is really sad.
Yep.
We're far more aware today and better equipped to handle things than what we were back in those days.
Yeah, like Carol said, police departments don't speak to each other back then. No computer systems and nothing. She was doing was getting connected. But where when she's in Emporia, Kansas, she's pulling it. And then she goes to the East Coast and she pulls it. And then she works her way back, pulling the same crap. And then she stops in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that's where she kills her last husband. And, Emporia and Tulsa aren't all that far apart to where local newspapers ain't going to start picking up on stuff. And effectively, that's how it got around that in telegrams.
Right. Well, and another really sad aspect that hit me kind of hard the other day when I was reading um, a little bit more about the baby is, you know, the trauma that Melvina had to live through. One, just being raised in the home with the situations happening, but now she has had two children murdered. She is suspecting her mother of it.
Oh,
And
she had to have known.
yeah,
She had to.
it stated that she went to family with her concerns and
Yep.
her family ignored her.
I
Nobody.
don't think it was Carol. I don't think it was they gave too much poison and it was looked into by the doctor. It was an intense intestinal stomach flu infection type deal. He was sent home. He suspected foul play but was not sure because they had no way to test for it then until the person had died. And then come to find out he suddenly died like 6 days later. So that in that small of a hospital, that's where you would go. You would go to the hospital and you would go into the cooler in the morgue and wait for the undertaker to come from wherever to come and get you, and they would do the autopsies right there at the hospital at the time, and in those days anyway. And that doctor had to have been like, okay, no, there's no reason he should have just keeled over dead in 6 days. I just released him. And that's
recovered when they sent him home.
Yep, that was essentially where it came from.
Yeah. And
And
Tina, oh, I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
nope, go ahead. That's what I was gonna do.
I was going to address her. That I don't know if you were in near the beginning when I was kind of addressing that very same thing. So I saw your comment and I was like, yes, that is exactly the same track that I am on. Is just wondering. And that's what I had stated is they suspect that her head injury was the cause of it, but we don't know. And that's where I was questioning, had the head injury been addressed, would it have made an impact? Or like you said, was she just some psychopath to begin with that wasn't going to change the outcome anyway? It was going to happen anyway because that's just who she was.
And we are, yeah, Carol, you're absolutely right. We are taught that in EMS and firefighter training that arsenic does, when it's straight liquid arsenic, it does smell like almonds. Not like decon that you get. It's not like that. It's purely concentrated stuff.
Yeah. Wasn't it the final husband who had stated, it said right before he died, that he had stated, I shouldn't have drank that second cup of coffee. One of I want to say it was the last husband, because she had been putting it in his food when he went to the hospital.
Yeah, even in the hospital.
Yes. When he came home, she had decided instead of his food just to put it straight in his coffee.
Yeah.
And it had been stated by her that he had made a comment. He had started having severe cramps again and has stated, I should not have drank that second cup of coffee, and he died. But
Yep.
that was supposed to be one of his last statements to her. And like I said, on some level, Tina, going back to your comment about psychopath, I still think, whatever the role that the head injury played or did not play, either way, you still have to, on some level, have a serious mental issue um, to laugh about the murders, and to do it to the extent that people are calling you the giggling granny.
Yep. And her names followed her around, like, and they still do in death. It's, when they're sitting there and they're talking about Giggling Granny. Well, some people know it as the Giggling Granny. Some people know it as the Lonely Hearts Killer. Um, the list of her names is, um, let me go on here. Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia.
So
One,
her
two, three,
listed
four.
names
Stuff.
was, I'm
Yep,
sorry,
it was Lonely Hearts Killer, the Jolly Black Widow, the Giggling Granny, and the Giggling Nanny.
yeah, Lady Bluebeard. I'm not
Yep,
sure where
Lady Bluebeard. I
it's
I didn't
from.
catch that either.
Yeah, in everything I pulled up, I even watched some stuff. I read and watched stuff. I am not sure where Lady Bluebeard comes from, but
That is our job, Carol. We bring you the lesser known ones when we dig in the bottom of the barrel. I tell you what, you find some woohoo quackos out there.
I will tell you, in researching her, I was trying so hard to not get sidetracked.
I'm not sitting by no old ladies in church.
I was researching her, and it kept tying all these other stories in, even going way back before her, some after her. But I'm like, oh my gosh, the amount of women who were
Mhm.
killing back then. I'm like, oh my
Did
gosh.
you did
I
you
was
read the list off
yeah,
of Wikipedia?
I did. I
Man,
was sending Dave, hey, here's another idea for a show at some point. Here's another one. I know Dave had to see my name popping up in Messenger and be thinking, oh my gosh, can we just
I got a I got a
what?
reprieve. I have when I'm at work by 5:45, so my first break's at 8, my second one's at 11:10, so I'm like, I got a little break from Phoenix for a little bit. No, I'm playing.
Oh, well, that was a little blunt. I
I'm
always
kidding.
appreciate honesty, though.
But you need to be nice to Phoenix. Don't make me come through this screen.
Thank you, Brandon. My knight in shining armor.
Uh,
Thank you.
but no, I mean, honestly, you were sending stuff to me. My mom was sending stuff. Like I said, my wife's grandmother, she's terminally ill with with cancer, and um, when I asked her, I said, "Nana, what do you remember about it?" And she looks at you and says, "Oh, she's freaking nuts." You know, she remembers her, and um, where Tulsa is honestly probably 2 hours from Nana's house, and Muskogee is only half hour. And then where she was in prison at Omax, which they call it Omax, which we'll get into that. I got some information on Oklahoma State Penitentiary, but it is one of the tightest, most secured prisons in the United States. They call it Big Macs.
Right.
And that's in McAllister, Oklahoma.
And I lived in Tulsa for several years. In fact, when we decide to do this show on my story, y'all will hear about that because that's where my prior husband was murdered, and he is buried at Fort Gibson in Muskogee. So I'm very, very familiar with the area, but it's interesting that I had never heard this story, having lived there, So it was, a very interesting story to me, and in a sense, on a personal level, because I had lived there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of that, wow, this is where some of this happened, and, where she did her time. And it was just kind of interesting. Um, Thank you, Carol. Um, but it was really interesting just from that aspect of it, and just that I had not heard. But then again, I'm a different generation from your wife's grandmother. She was actually alive when this happened. And, maybe even up to when Nannie died, maybe but I was born after that. So maybe that's part of why I just never heard it. But it was a very interesting story. Um, I'm somewhat familiar with the penitentiary there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she is buried at Oak Hill Memorial Park, and she passed in 1965.
Yep, she's out in her remains are in California, San Juan.
She died
San
of.
Juan Busta Hills of South San Jose is where she's at. And why is beyond me if that's where Melba and the rest of the people went, but she had no ties that I've ever found to San Jose, California, or in the general vicinity of it. Everything was either Midwest tied or North Carolina.
Mhm.
Maybe she wanted to change the scenery.
She might have felt like the heat was getting to be too much. But yeah, she did. She passed in 1965 in the hospital ward of the state penitentiary from leukemia.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, she was never charged with the other murders.
Nope, just
Even
one.
though she confessed to them and was able to tell them all about it. You know, she was never charged, which kind of baffles me as well. Is I'm thinking if you're going to confess to all these murders, you would probably be charged unless they felt like, well, she's already going to spend her life in prison. It's not going to change that outcome. But I would still think that it would, by charging her and having her confess, that it would still bring closure, definite closure in a legal aspect of she being held accountable, I guess, in
Yeah.
that sense.
Even though she confessed to it, I think at that point they were already fighting a couple other things that her prosecution or her defense team was trying to do. I think they just went with the one, and because the rest she could sit there and claim that she did them, but they still don't know. They're not gonna. They didn't have the capacity to exhume and DNA test yet, so
And
there's
that's
and
true.
residuals. I really don't think. And when they embalmed people back then, it was not very good if they were embalmed at all. Um, so yeah, there was no way for them to tie her to them, even if she wrote a statement out. There had to be evidence without beyond a shadow of a doubt before they were going to try and convict her of 11 murders. And it could have been back then they were looking at it, no, she's saying this because she wants the glory, she wants the fame. We can already tell she's not right in the head. Are we going to continue this charade, or are we going to put this to bed? So
Right. Yeah, and that makes sense. Uh,
mhm.
and Tina, as far as whether she was a drifter, I don't know that she was necessarily a drifter as such. I think that more so when she left an area because she kind of stayed. Dave, wouldn't you agree that she kind of
She
stayed
stayed in that
in these
circle.
areas, like kind of a
Yep.
circle? And the only reason she went out to Tulsa is because that is where the final husband was. Her birth name was Nancy Hazel.
Yep.
That
And
was the birth
her
name, Carolyn.
her last name, or her name, was Nannie, but it's spelled Nannie, Doss, Doss.
Right. Her
That
birth
was
name was Nancy Hazel. But yes, I'm sorry, Nanny was kind of a nickname her parents called her, and she just stuck to it the rest of her life.
and she was her mom was Louisa Kneeholder, and her dad was James F. Hazel. She was one of the 5 children. So before we go into conviction and everything else, we're coming up on the end of our first hour. Do we want to go ahead and take our short intermission and then come back and dazzle the masses with more tricks and turns and things less explored?
Absolutely. And I'm loving some of the comments and questions.
Oh, I am too. We're getting so many people.
Y'all are getting the rusty wheels in my head turning with some of the questions and stuff too. So,
Yep.
yeah, I'm really loving the interaction. So,
Yes, it's great. If you're commenting, hit that heart button and get them numbers up for the hearts and likes. We'll take a break. When we come right back, we are going to have more true crime, murder, mystery, and cold case. Stay tuned for more Giggling Granny. Welcome back, everybody, to our second hour of Nannie Doss. To kind of do a recap, she was convicted for killing her husband. Hello, Evelyn. I wondered where you were at. Yes, get that coffee. Just make sure it doesn't smell like almonds. To give you a recap, she had confessed to killing 4 of her husbands: her mother, her sister, her grandson, and her mother-in-law. The We got to the part of the confession and the conviction. She was prosecuted by Howard Edmondson, who later became the governor of Oklahoma. She pled guilty in May the 17th of 1955. Doss was never charged with any of the other deaths. She was only charged in her husband's death, Sam Doss. And her sentence was life imprisonment. The reason at this time, you got to remember, we're set right in the smack dab in the middle of the 1950s. We're in the Deep South, in the Bible Belt. The state did not pursue the death penalty due to her sex, because she was a woman. The judge deliberated in his chambers for 6.5 days before rendering his verdict because of his own Christian beliefs before he handed down the sentence. She did die of leukemia in the hospital ward of the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in 1965. The Oklahoma State Penitentiary, just to give you guys a little bit of a rundown, it's nicknamed Big Mac. It sits in McAlester, Oklahoma. It sits on 1,556 acres. When it opened in 1908, which makes it, quick math, 115 years old, the 50 inmates were in this makeshift facility at the time. Today, the prison holds more than 750 male offenders, the vast majority of which are maximum security. To give you an idea, crimes were going on during this time before Oklahoma became a state in 1907. People that were convicted in the Oklahoma Territory and Indian Territory then were sent to the Kansas State Penitentiary in Lansing, Kansas. When Kate Bernard, the statehood came, Kate Bernard became the Oklahoma Commissioner for Charities and Corrections. And during that summer of 2008, she announced that there would be investigation on Kansas prisons, would lead to widespread complaints about the mistreatment of Oklahoma inmates. Therefore, they came up with the idea for OMAX. Anybody from Oklahoma and heard stories, OMAX is basically the equivalent of Alcatraz on steroids. That's where the worst of the worst go.
I wanted to cover something real quick. Part of my research came from, it's very small writing even with my glasses. It's allthat'sinteresting.com/Nannie Doss Giggling Grannie is the website. And it stated in here that authorities did exhume some of the previous victims. It doesn't state who they were or how many, it just states some of the victims, and found extraordinary amounts of arsenic or rat poison in their bodies. But it also turns out that back in those days, it was a very common household ingredient
Mm-hmm.
that was in many things, household cleaners or other things. Um, and so it was a very easy way to kill someone because it didn't leave a trace the same way other things would. Um, and plus, it was in common household stuff. So proving that it was purposely put into someone's food or drink was a little bit of a challenge.
And
Um,
also, I did forget to state, bringing on the autopsies and automatically testing for arsenic. During this time, they also would put better labels and caps and things like that on because kids were actually ingesting it by accident, young kids. And you got to think these kinds of bottles, which right here, you can see it, all that would have had in it was a rubber stopper or a cork back in the day.
Mhm.
It wouldn't have had um, like a twist cap or you know the old jars that had the metal seals on them or anything like that. It just would have flat out been a stopper in it. Um, so I the poison control came out shortly after all these convictions and things came to light too.
It is a fairly big prison, Carol. And I apologize for laughing. I picked a bad time to laugh because Dave's talking about something serious. But I had read your comment and had laughed. I was like, wait, wait, wait. But I was laughing at your comment, Carol, when you said you made it and it's safe. So
Yep.
I read that and I had to chuckle. But that that just was so funny to me when I read that. But yeah, as they showed you, they weren't, well, even now I struggle sometimes with the child-proof locks, and it's my kids who can walk up and open them with no problem at times, and I'm like, and I'm sitting here struggling, like, what in the world? Um, so, but I mean, at least they're making more of an effort nowadays to try to prevent the accidental stuff. But when they did the autopsy reports on the um, relatives that were exhumed, they did find huge amounts of arsenic in their bodies. I don't eat
Mhm.
almonds either, Carol, but which would, I would feel back her confession that she did poison them, because I would think if it was accidental, I don't know how would, if it's in cleaner, I don't know.
Yeah,
I just
even even if it's accidental at that point, you already have her confession, but you also have to look at when did you say they exhumed the bodies?
all it states here is after her confession. It doesn't give me a year.
Okay,
Uh,
because
that's what I was.
she was only lived about 9.5 years in prison before she died of the leukemia. And if they did, it depends on when they actually got the evidence because of statute of limitations at the time. And were they honestly going to drag her, for lack of a better term, goofy, uh, insane ass back into court to make another uh, publication of herself and have to deal with all that all over again? Because the defense wouldn't be any different than what the other ones were.
Okay, so this still is not giving me a time that they were exhumed. Um, but right here it states on Murderpedia it states that Doss's husbands and children were exhumed. 2 infant children, 4 of her husbands, her sister, mother. And then it was found later. This is stating, I don't know how accurate it is. This is the first time I have seen this. So I am not going to put this out as a fact. This is the first place that I have found this, but it states that a nephew had been found with high amounts of arsenic. But like I said, this is the first website that I have read anything about the nephew. Did you get the website, Dave?
I'm looking it up.
Murderpedia.org.
Yep.
So, but this is the first, like I said, this is the first time I have read a nephew involved. I have not seen that. So I don't want to put that out there as a fact.
Murderpedia is usually a pretty reputable source, so let's go through it, all of us together. Okay. So classified, aka Giggling Grandma, classification serial killer. Characteristics: poisoner, tried to collect insurance money. Number of victims between 8 and 11. The dates of the murders span from 1920s to 1954. So we're talking a 30-year span. Date of arrest was in October of 54. And here we have her 4 husbands, her mother, her sister Dovie, her grandson Robert, and her mother-in-law, and Arlie Lanning's mother. So yes, it is in that complete circle of Alabama, North Carolina, back to Kansas again, and then finally in Oklahoma. She was sentenced May 17th of 55. She died June 2nd of 1965. Excuse me. So she was actually in for 10 months and a year, or 10 years and a month. Mm-hmm. What do we have here?
Real quick, while you're looking, Carol, to answer your question about the arsenic, there's both inorganic and organic. And organic, both will leave the body through urine. However, organic arsenic will leave faster than inorganic. Inorganic arsenic is, it is possible that it can stay for, it states several months or even longer. So it is possible. Plus, I guess if they're dead and not able to continue to urinate, it's possible that the arsenic can continue to stay even beyond the months. Considering that it was found in the husband's, and we have to remember how early her first husband found it. Yes, you're correct. I don't know how advanced their testing was back during this time, though, Kathy. I don't know if they found it in hair and nails or if it was in the organs. I'm not real clear on the advancement of autopsies back then, but I know her first killing was in the early 20s, and it wasn't until after her confession, when she was being sentenced, that they exhumed the body. So that's been a few years that it was able to stay in the body. And yes, you're right about the insulin in the body and it being hard to find, but that's also because we naturally make that in the body and our body breaks it down and uses it. So I think that might be a little bit of a difference in why insulin can be so much harder to find than arsenic.
Okay, so we have Sam Doss in Tulsa. He died during July of 54. He died a month later And the obligatory autopsy revealed he had enough arsenic in his system to kill 20 men. When she was confronted with the evidence of guilt, Nannie Dawes issued confessions spanning 3 decades, at least 10 murders, drawing a term of life imprisonment in 1955. Throughout her various confessions and the years in jail, Nannie insisted that money played no significant role in her crimes, which I find to be a load of shit. Anyway, despite various insurance payments, her murders were actually motivated by marital boredom, a dream of discovering the ideal husband, and described in her favorite, quote, true romance magazines. That's about it. Nannie told her interrogators, I was searching for the perfect mate, the real romance of life. She's nuts.
Yeah. So, yes, to answer your question, Kathy, she did confess to all of the murders. And then, like I said, with the infant, that was not arsenic. That was the hat pin put through the baby's soft spot.
Yep.
I agree, Carol. Just divorce them. I'm not. I'm not trying to look that good in an orange jumpsuit. I might be able to pull it off, but I'd rather not.
Orange is not the new black.
Not for me. Yeah, but she collected, was it 3 life insurance checks, and then she thought she was going to collect not life insurance, the insurance check for the house that burned down, but she did not get that. But I believe, well, actually, she fraudulently signed that after, wasn't it the mother-in-law and sister that it was left, and then they both died? And
Yep. The mother-in-law, she mysteriously died. And then the sister had died, but the sister was left with the house with the mom, but it was only Nannie and the mom in the house. The sister wasn't there yet.
Right.
And then when Nannie's mom, Louisa, broke her hip and she was recovering from surgery, Nannie was nursing her, and that's when Nannie killed her mother.
Dave, can you scroll back up? Carolyn Durbin Assay is asking what states she committed these in.
Okay, it would be Alabama, North Carolina, Kansas, and finally back to Oklahoma.
Yeah. Oh, Carol, yeah, I'm with you. I have worn orange, but I gotta be very careful. But I can tell you that kind of orange is probably not
So
on most
part
people.
of her defense team came up, and this is the first time this was ever tried with them. Let's see if it's the right one. Yeah. They actually declared her insane. Prisoner was not likely to stand trial. However, again, the judge is sitting there thinking, well, she shows zero signs for humanity and preserving human life and what little it means to her. She was going to stand trial. And then the judge gets another curveball. The state wants to seek the death penalty. And when this is striking to me, and you guys are not going to believe this, this was after she got convicted of murder, she's walking out of the courthouse with her legal team, not under guard.
Mm-hmm.
The detective in the back with the hat on is looking like, where is everybody at? Why is nobody around her? You can't tell me by the look on that face that is a sane woman, because she just received life in prison.
Mm-hmm.
She pled guilty and faces a term of life or death. They hadn't actually taken or gotten the sentence yet. Was she out on bail? I don't know. I didn't go that far into it. But I mean, over here in the side, widow seems quote unquote pleased by surprise plea. And then it quotes, "I am not worried," she says. "Sentencing scheduled for May 31st."
Yeah.
And all throughout the court proceedings, investigation, interrogations, she is always smiling.
Laughing.
She's walking out of the county DA's office with a shit-eating grin on her face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. She doesn't look like a woman who is on her way to spending her life in prison.
No. And she's getting confronted with all this evidence right in front of her here. And this is right before she busted out laughing uncontrollably. And then you have this one, knowing she's doing everything to these kids. That is one of her daughters. And you can see the look on that daughter's face like, don't touch my children. That is a mama bear ready to pounce right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Carol. Something's not connecting, because I can tell you I would be a sniffling little crybaby, every step of the way, Yeah, I would not be laughing and smiling, talking about it and knowing I'm going to prison. Something definitely was wrong. Um,
Carolyn, are you saying what states did she commit the murders in, is what you meant? You can even look at her eyes. They're like, there is no emotion there other than hysteria. It's written all over her face in every picture.
Yeah, that's how I took the question from Carolyn, is what states she committed the murders in. But if
Okay.
I misunderstood Carolyn, definitely please correct me.
Okay.
She
Yep.
said,
It was Alabama, North Carolina, then back to Kansas, and then in Oklahoma. And she was finally caught in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she spent 10 years and 1 month of a life sentence in the Big Max, which is the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. It's maximum security level, where she died of leukemia in the hospital wing. I I'm still leaning on there had to have been some frontal lobe trauma to the brain, plus what she was reading going along with it, because I don't think she was mentally capable or capacitated enough to separate the thin line between falsehood and reality, what can be real in life and what can't be real in life. What is fantasy and what's real. And honestly, if you look into a lot of serial killers, and even flat out run of the mill murderers, they have a hard time separating fantasy from reality. And it was at this time, when she slammed into that bar, and what had happened was she was on a train to Arkansas or Alabama to visit family. The driver had seen a big pine tree had been blown over onto the track, and he slammed on the brakes. Excuse me. And she was 7 years old. Well, I was born in '84, and I can honestly remember where I didn't have a car seat or a seatbelt. We used to lay in the back of the window, and when Dad would slam on the brakes, we would ping pong around the car. Back then you weren't too good to go through the windshield with the rest of the family. Honestly, that's how we looked at things. But the safety wasn't there, and it sure as hell wouldn't have been there in the trains in the teens and 20s. So she had a galvanized handlebar, that when he slammed on the brakes, her face lurched forward and she took the brunt of the force right to the forehead. And from then on, she had blackouts. She'd have migraines. Hor uh, just um, horrible pain. And that's when, honestly, she was getting into her mom's romance novels after this too, and her romance magazines and stuff like that. Well, mental health, I can tell you what they did for mental health. There's a state mental health hospital that's literally 16 miles from me. It's been going for I think 130 years. It's the Mental Health Institute in um, Independence, Iowa. Well, back in this time, it would have been the state hospital for the criminally insane, um, uh, and stuff like that. They would lock them up. They would chain them up in the tunnels in cages because they were unruly. They didn't know what to do with them, and when that didn't work, they would go with prefrontal lobotomies. Prefrontal lobotomies, they take the tops piece of skin from the skull, they flip it back, they take a drill and they drill two holes in the top of your head, and they scramble the front of your frontal lobe, and then they put the skin flap down. And you can look at a lot of old patients, you can see the indentation yet where pieces of skull are missing and the flap is just the only thing that covers. And these guys got turned into a vegetative state. At that time, they used to think, well, the brain would heal itself, everything will go back to normal. When that didn't work, they went to electroshock therapy. So the study on mental health, in all reality, is seriously young and in its infancy stage. And yes, you're absolutely right, Kathy. Same thing with NASCAR drivers. The front of their brain literally turns to mush because they hit it at such a velocity. Um, do I honestly think that's something that happened? Yes. And then combined with not being able to separate fantasy from fiction at this point, whether it was due to the head trauma or not, personally, I think it was. No medication, no therapy to speak of, no coping mechanisms. The only thing she did was surround herself and immerse herself into the fantasy world of romance. And what is every girl dream of being when they are young? A Disney princess, have that fairy tale ending. Well, if you think about it, what does every Disney princess movie have? A witch or a bad person or something like that that results to poison to try and fix everything.
Right.
Could it have gone that way? Yeah, sure. It could have been in one of her romance novels. We don't know. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think it was handled right for her from the get-go. She should have been looked at, assessed,
Right.
but definitely I think there was frontal lobe damage.
Uh, as to the question, I have been trying to look while Dave's been talking to the question, Carol, you had of visitors while she was, I'm assuming you mean while she was incarcerated from other
And
families.
Carol,
I
I
can't,
do think it started at 7 years old. I do. I think she was stunted.
yeah. Dave, did you run across any information that let you know whether or not family visited her while she was incarcerated?
Outside of petitioning the state to get a hold of records from the 1955 through 1965, that 10-year span, um, there's no way to honestly probably know unless it's eyewitness account from a guard or they released her prison file.
Right.
I mean, Google's vast, but Google isn't necessarily that vast when it comes to Department of Corrections files. A lot of them they don't release a lot of stuff. There's only certain tidbits they will release to the public. Kind of like the FBI. The FBI, when they investigate and profile, they will only give you so much information, and later on, when everything's all said and done, years and years and years later, they might put stuff out, but it's only crumbs.
Right.
You're not going to get the steak and potatoes from the whole story and a big reveal. That's why I love cold cases and murder mystery like this, is because you get to draw your own conclusion. You immerse yourself into it, and it you have when you're doing a case like this, you have to literally read it, everything about it, take a couple days, ponder everything over, and then go back over the same stuff again, but step back and have that mental capacity to look at it from a different set of eyes and standpoint, because there's something you could have missed. It's like movies. I can watch the same movie 500 times in a row. I always spot something I missed.
Right.
And I'm a theologian. I love studying stuff. I will research everything to death.
Yeah, I even looked up her daughter Melvina to see if under her name if it would give any information, but I just can't find anything. I haven't been trying to be rude, but I was
No,
trying
you're
to answer
absolutely, you're fine.
that question. It doesn't matter which of her children or family I pull up or anything. I just can't get any information on whether any family stood by her or not, or visited her. Um, did you just say you use Trojans?
No, I'm a theologian. Okay, we have her. Melvina B. Braggs Leonard. I will pull this up.
Absolutely, Carol. There's many rabbit holes.
So I found her daughter.
I think she passed, was it
Um,
84? Yeah, 1984.
yep, years old man was born. Yep, December 16th, 1984, at the age of 58 in Calhoun County. Uh, she stayed in Alabama. In Alabama. Um,
She's very
this would have been Yep, this would have been her dad. Um, and I'm shocked they seeing an obituary just because I'm pretty sure with all the these on here after these aren't ones that were put up. Those were added by people after the fact. So she's buried in Hartshorn, Oklahoma, in Elmwood Cemetery.
Dave, Brandon's comment, I was 3. I'm assuming he's talking about when Melvina passed, he was 3.
No, I think he was talking about when the Giggling Granny died.
I was like,
But he's out of the room, so I don't know if he heard me because he's not down there looking at me right now. I see him pop on.
How old do you think I am?
yeah, I don't. He just walked away.
Yeah.
For you.
Oh, that might be him over there ready to come over. No, I bet he don't have his sound on. I bet it's on his headset. I could talk so much trash right now. He can't fire me. Look underneath my name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
when
I do love stories like this. I love having everybody in the comments just how much you guys are putting into the show, the aspect, things you're throwing at us that I love it when I can get a comment from you guys or a question. I can let Phoenix talk and I can work in the background and I can find the answer out for you. I love being able to do that. I love being able to snap, fly, do something in the nick of time. And me and Phoenix, honestly, other than me being a guest on a show or just sitting around talking, we had never had a podcast together before where we were co-hosts. But everybody's like, "Oh my God, you guys would meld together so awesome! Like, you need to do it." And I'm like, "I don't know what we would do, And because before I was doing teaching guitar and piano, and now I went for true crime, cold cases, and murder mystery, and I've always loved things like this. I mean, I grew up on Unsolved Mysteries, for crying out loud. Not the new one, the old one. But we were talking crap about you since
I was just
you took your headset off.
Wait a minute, Brandon. We were not talking
Oh,
crap.
Now you single out the owner.
See.
She goes, 1983 or 1984, he says he was 3, and I'm like, she goes, is that? And I said, no, I think he's talking about when Nannie died.
Yeah, okay, I'm not that old.
That's what Dave was saying. He was like, he says, I'm waiting for Brandon to get on here and say, how old do you think I am?
And
get off my lawn.
I seen your shadow over there. I seen your shadow over there, and I'm like, oh my God, he has his audio going through his headphones. I could talk so much crap right now.
Yes.
Yes, Brandon is younger than me as well. I felt a little bit old when I read that comment.
I look this way because it's been a rough life.
Yep.
With much wisdom.
I know, Kathy. I feel like Rodney Dangerfield. I get no respect.
Dave, I will pull you out from under the bus, and even though I am innocent of wrongdoing, I will share in it.
Yep, you are an accomplice. You were there giggling right along with him.
I was gonna say, Considering this my show too, I guess I have to take some accountability.
Both of y'all smell the diesel fuel from that bus.
I got an axe grease streak right here. Oh man.
Yeah,
But no, honestly, I love doing shows like this. I love the participation from the audience. You guys, you make the show. We can sit here and talk till we're blue in the face, but having that connection with you guys one on one on the backside, and you guys immersing yourselves into the case as well with us is awesome. I want to thank you guys for that.
absolutely. Yes, Kathy, I think some of us on here tonight might have tire tracks. But no, you know what? Honestly, we would not have a show if it wasn't for the people listening and commenting. And I too love the interaction.
Absolutely, Carol. Absolutely. I knew that was going to happen eventually. If you got me on Facebook, do what Phoenix does. Send me like 8 of them. I'm playing. Now she's going to send me nothing for 2 weeks.
I bombard him. I do. I spider webbed a windshield before seatbelts were mandatory. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm sorry,
Wow.
Kathy. Yeah.
My first seatbelt was sitting in the front seat and Mom throwing that arm over to the center of your chest.
I still do that. I've done that to my husband, believe it or not. When we go places as a family, for some reason he likes me to drive, and I'm good with that because, well, sometimes he drives, but I love to drive. So usually, we pile in my car and I drive. But I still, if I have to hit my brakes a little hard, someone pulls right out in front of me, I still throw that arm out, and my husband's kind of going like, really? The Cecil. Oh, okay. Hotel with Lamb. Yes, yes. I think isn't that in Los Angeles? Carol, is that the story out of Los Angeles?
Okay.
I believe you're talking about the Cecil Hotel. Is that correct? Yeah, the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. And Eliza or Elisa, I think it's Eliza Lamb. She was from Canada, if I remember correctly. Yes, I've already started looking into that story. I started that a little while back. Yep. Yes. The Cecil Dave.
So if you will put hashtag diesel fuel in the comments, you will be entered for a giveaway.
I'm going to have to take him down to HR tomorrow.
Hey, wait a minute. That's me. Hey, Brandon, you're good. I gotcha.
Thank you very much. It's nice to know people in high places.
That's that corporate cover.
Put hashtag diesel fuel. This is a real giveaway, and I'm going to make Dave give something away. Hashtag diesel fuel.
Dave, I have already looked somewhat into this story. You will love it. And I'm going to tell you there's stories going on about the Cecil Hotel as well that somewhat delve into the paranormal also.
It's all got to be one word, Kathy.
Look at you getting all technical. I'm just harassing you.
When you do get a chance, look up Lyric and Elizabeth in Waterloo, Iowa, their case.
Carol, thank you for bringing that up. With all the thought I've put into future shows, I had actually not thought of this. I am very grateful. See, that's why we love the comments. And I am ecstatic to do this show. It for me, it's topping the charts.
Yes, I love it. I do. We got 15 minutes. Hashtag diesel fuel.
I guess we're excluded from the drawing.
I don't know. I might put it in there so I can gift myself something. But that ain't fair. Man, I gotta
It
quit
is
thinking
a very
like that.
strange case, Carol. Absolutely very strange case. I mean, it's just downright kind of, I mean, the whole situation, I'm not going to say too much because we're not on that story, but the whole situation with Eliza is just sad. But also with that, all the paranormal activity and stories and stuff that, I mean, it's a case that we could probably very definitely spend the 2 hours, if not longer, on just
Mm-hmm.
into all aspects of that.
Um, I've got actually 2 episodes. My wife's aunt sent me on lesser heard, but still notorious serial killers in the United States. So
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Kathy, I'm with you. I'm very curious. Oh, excuse me. Um, yeah, I would love to see if anything has changed um, now that it's an office building.
yeah. Oh
HH.
yes, we need to do that one too. I also want to do. Oh crap! I forgot his name now. Uh, yeah, H. Holmes, the first. That's it. He is known as this country's very first original serial killer. So yes,
Yeah,
H. Holmes. We have to
AJ.
do that one.
Yeah, Jack the Ripper. Yeah, I also mentioned the Night Stalker as another one we could look into, and of course that was a crazy case. Carol, you said
Send that information where I can look that up, Carol. Send that to Skydoor Entertainment in a message, please.
yeah, and also anybody. I only have my personal page. I may set up another one for the show and kind of end up separating
I I
personal things.
need to make you admin on true crime, cold case, and murder mystery that's on Facebook
Okay.
because we broadcast to that page too.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say anytime, but you're welcome to add me on Facebook. And, if you have any other ideas, definitely send them to us. It doesn't have to be, tonight. If in a couple days something jumps in your head and you have a request for a show, shoot it at us. And also, we post the shows that are coming up and give you a little idea of what the show is going to be on. So, we'll definitely take the suggestions to heart and get some shows going on those, and let you know what's coming up.
Yep, definitely, and always make sure to follow. If you see a show that you want to be a party to in the comments, make sure you click interested so that it will remind you. There's times I will schedule these guys' show and our own 6 days out, and by then it's lost in the news feeds.
Right.
But if you do it that way and you click interested as soon as you see it, come across that there's going to be a show, it will automatically send you a reminder on Facebook when we go live. If you head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe, everything shows up in our live streams, even the upcoming, so you can make sure you get notifications. Hit the bell symbol, and the notification will send it straight to your phone. As far as Twitter, as long as you follow us on Twitter, all of our shows are broadcast to Twitter. TikTok is still working on doing live stream broadcasts from StreamYard. So we're looking into that. Other than that, the only other way I can think about going live is getting a holder for the phone, but at the same time, you're only going to get one-sided audio. So I will try and fix that in the meantime. But hashtag diesel fuel. If you haven't already, throw the owner under the bus. Give him that diesel fuel. I drove truck for 13 and a half years. There ain't nothing like the smell of diesel fuel in the morning.
My mom drove for 22 years. Yeah. And then Dave and I also have in common, we were both firefighter EMTs.
Yep. I was volunteer.
I am writing down all of y'all's suggestions, so bear with me. I'm not trying to ignore anyone, but I see.
Oh yes, I forgot about that. The Green Mile or the
Green River. Yeah.
Great Falls, Montana. Yep. I talked to Kathy about that. My uncle lived in Judith Basin County in a little town called Stanford, Montana, and we go out there every summer. And oh my God, there's nothing like going through the Badlands, looking at the Rockies, and it still takes you 3/4 of a day to get even close enough to them. One minute you're driving through clouds at the top of the mountains, which they're not mountains, they're the Little Belt Mountains. But you drive for miles, and then you're in sunshine again, and then you're in. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And one of my most prominent, best childhood memories. I was 9 years old. We went to Glacier National Park, and they have St. Mary's Lake. And when it's crystal clear, the water is so blue, and the mountain makes a bowl around it, and in the middle there is an island with a rock formation that looks like St. Mary from a distance. And I was so speechless because I was there on a clear day, which is really rare, and I just broke down and wept because of the beauty of it. That is truly God's country.
BTK was another interesting story as well.
Yep. I will tell you guys, I will probably not do Dahmer or Bundy or Gacy. They have been nailed to the wall so many times. I want to bring you ones that you guys have rarely heard about, might know about, but not a lot. But I am so over Bundy and Dahmer and Gacy.
Yeah. My thoughts are to do a variety of them, cases, some that are older, similar to what we did tonight. Some that can be more well known, like our very first show, we did Casey Anthony.
Yep.
But I think Dave and I both are kind of on the same page that ones that have just been super overly done, it's not that we won't do one at all ever, maybe, but we're kind of steering clear of those in favor of ones that are not quite as so overdone.
So we got 3 people watching, but only 2 entries in the in the hashtag diesel fuel. And Brandon, if you want to come up, I think I figured out exactly what I am going to give away.
What is it?
I am going to let the person that wins research right along with me and Phoenix a serial killer, true crime, cold case mystery of their own that they want to hear about, and they can come on and they can help run the show, and we will have them on as a special guest host.
That sounds awesome. What are you gonna win? You do the work for us, and
oh no, we're gonna do it too. We're gonna do the work too.
I'm sticking with the diesel fuel theme here.
Yeah,
no, I mean, dude, that sounds
pretty
good.
Yeah, give them a moment of fame and let them something they're passionate about. I mean, they get real passionate about these shows. They really do, and I love it. It's awesome.
Oh heck yeah! Well, I mean, are you ready for me to spin it, or are we gonna wait a little bit, or what?
We got about 2 minutes. We get everybody. Make sure that they've done their hashtag diesel fuel, stick it to the boss type deal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Phoenix, as always, wonderful co-host. Brandon, thanks for everything you do in the background. I know sometimes you have to be of your own mind plus be in my head at the same time because I'll zoom around doing stuff while you're trying to produce.
It's kind of frightening, but you know what? We do what we can here at Skydoor Entertainment.
Oh yeah, and everybody that watched the show tonight, it would not be anything but a hobby if it wasn't for you guys. But I live for these Fridays. I really do. I
Thank you, Kathy.
I am so honored to have you guys in the comments.
Absolutely. Yeah. Y'all really
right.
are the ones that make the show.
15 seconds.
Here we go.
All right, Vanna White, hit it.
Vanna White.
She's from South Carolina. And we've got
Carol
Garcia.
Remember to smile. Yes, she did say it too.
Yeah.
So, Carol, get a topic for us to research. We will bring you on and you will be a guest host on a show to come here shortly.
Can I pop it?
Congratulations, Carol.
Congratulations, Carol. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, this is exciting. I'm excited to see what story you want to work on. We've got a lot of suggestions. You gave us some. Yeah, hit us up. Thank you, I think. You'll be great. You know, it might be a little nerve-wracking at first, but once you get in and start talking and we'll be there with you, you'll be great.
And you'll get to see, hey, you're one of the ones that will actually get to see the behind the scenes of what is and makes Skydoor Entertainment. How does this show work and go along? And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to put her through that, but no. Anyway,
sorry, Carol. Sorry.
It's fun. It's fun. We're like another family over here on the network, and
yeah,
don't be camera shy. Come into it as if you're going to a meeting at work that you've worked there for 30 years and you're not going to take anybody's crap.
That's good that you talk like Dave and I have our moments. There's some shows where Dave's talking and I'm like, excuse me.
You know, my wife actually said that. She's like, how about you let Phoenix take point this week?
And then there's other times that, as you see, and I actually did not know I was taking point this week. I'm so used to Dave doing it, and I'm always like, can I throw something in? And he's like, well, of course, Phoenix. But, but it's great. I mean, we both have our moments because even if he kind of starts it off and goes, trust me, I get to where I jump in and I'm just patty Kathy there and going. So no, Carol, don't worry about the fact that you got your other toys. I mean, that's great. That's
Yep.
awesome.
And it's fun. It's laid back. This ain't a multi-million-dollar, production.
Now,
If it was, I would have been in makeup before I got in here. I wouldn't have dark circles under my eyes.
Makeup, hair.
I'm not traveling to Kentucky to go to makeup.
It's only a 9.5 hour.
No kidding.
No, really, it's pretty laid back. Try to have a certain level of, no bare feet propped up on camera or something, but yet laid back. And we really are a family, and I'm excited. Absolutely thrilled to have you on, and I don't know, it'll be good.
Yep, absolutely.
And you get to see me without a hat for once.
We're looking at you without a hat.
Oh, well, there. I blew that, didn't I?
See what happens, karma, when you mess with the boss.
Hashtag diesel fuel.
Thank you, Carol.
I know what Shaman Sundays is going to have a hashtag for now.
Also, Carol, when you come on live, you get to do stuff like this.